evening. I will now call the November 15th San Diego County Board of Supervisors regular meeting back to order. I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. Before I call the roll, I would like to note for the record that Vice Chair Vargas and Supervisor Desmond are participating via teleconference. As such, all votes will be handled by a roll call vote. With that, I'll now call the roll. Supervisor Anderson.
Here.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer is absent. Supervisor Desmond.
Here.
Vice Chair Vargas. Chair Fletcher.
Fletcher here. With that, we have a three-member quorum. I want to welcome everyone to this year's Truth Act hearing. This forum aims to increase transparency around local engagement with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, also known as ICE. ICE is a federal agency concerned with immigration enforcement. California state law, SB 54, the California Values Act, limits what ICE can do within the state of California. Passed in 2016, the Truth Act requires any local legislative body to hold a community forum annually if local law enforcement within that jurisdiction allows ICE access to any individual. In a time when our community, especially our immigrant and refugee communities, have been dealing with a heightened sense of fear and so much uncertainty, the intention of the Truth Act and the Truth Act Forum is to ensure that jurisdictions comply with state law. Our compliance with SB 54 and the Truth Act is important not only because it builds trust, but ultimately because it keeps our communities safe. We must constantly search for more effective ways to make a better community. This is about making the truth available and accessible to everyone. Our communities cannot be empowered and feel truly safe without transparency and accountability, which is why we are here tonight. This year, the structure of the Truth Act Forum was created with extensive community input, giving members of the public additional opportunities to ask questions and obtain information needed to understand how our Sheriff's Department interacts with immigration enforcement agencies. We have Sheriff Tony Ray with us here tonight, along with other representatives from the Sheriff's Department, and we appreciate you being here. Sheriff Ray will give a presentation on the Sheriff's Department's interaction with ICE. Then we will go to public comments. Following public comments, the clerk of the board will facilitate previously submitted questions by the public for the sheriff's response, and then board members will have the opportunity for any comments that they wish to make. With that, Sheriff, I'll turn it over to you for your presentation.
Chair Fletcher, I have a brief introduction. Good evening to you and to members of the board. The Transparent Review of Unjust Transfers and Holds Act, as codified in Government Code Section 7283.1, requires the governing body of a county to hold a community forum if a law enforcement agency within that county has provided Immigration and Customs Enforcement with access to an individual during the past year. Every year, County Council asks all department heads to answer whether their department provided ICE with access to an individual for the purposes of civil immigration enforcement. The Sheriff's Department is the only department with information to report. At this time, I'll turn the presentation over to Sheriff Tony Ray for additional detail. Sheriff?
Thanks, Holly. I'm on. Good evening, Chair Fletcher and members of the board. 2022 marks the fourth year of the San Diego Sheriff's Department coming before the Board of Supervisors and the community to shine a light on the Sheriff's Department's practices and data since the implementation of the Truth Act. This evening's presentation is focused on looking back on the history of the legislation that governs local law enforcement's role when it comes to immigration enforcement standards, the data associated with individuals in our custody, as well as the steps we are continually making to upholding public safety. Like prior years, I would like to take a moment to provide the community some background information on key California immigration laws that involved local law enforcement. In 2013, 2016, and 2017, a trio of immigration bills from the state legislature were signed that impacted law enforcement agencies' involvement in federal immigration enforcement. The Transparency and Responsibility Using State Tools Act, known as the Trust Act, was approved by the governor in 2013 and implemented in 2014. This bill deals with how authorities handle immigration transfers and notification requests from ICE. It limits the crimes for which jails can hold a person that ICE wants to arrest and deals with people who are in jail and whether an ICE transfer or notification request is honored based on the crime that person committed. In 2017, the Transparent Review of Unjust Transfer and Holds, or the Truth Act, went into effect, requiring local law enforcement agencies, prior to an interview between the United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement and an individual in custody regarding civil immigration violations, to provide the individual a written consent form as specified that would explain, among other things, the purpose of the interview, that it is voluntary, and that the individual may decline to be interviewed. It required the consent form to be available in specified languages: English, Spanish, Chinese, Tagalog, Vietnamese, and Korean. It required a local law enforcement agency to provide copies of specified documentation from ICE to the individual and to notify the individual regarding the intent of the agency to comply with ICE requests. It is also the state statute that brings us here this evening, since it requires the local governing body to hold a public community forum to provide information to the public about ICE's access to individuals. In 2018, Senate Bill 54, the California Values Act, also known as the Sanctuary State Law, went into effect, which did the following. It prohibits state and local law enforcement from holding individuals on the basis of federal immigration detainers or transferring them into federal custody unless they've been convicted in the last 15 years for one of a list of 31 crimes or are a registered sex offender. If not, they may only be held with a warrant from a federal judge. SB 54 prohibits state and local law enforcement from asking anyone about their immigration status. SB 54 states that local and state law enforcement authorities may not use resources, including personnel or facilities, to investigate or arrest people for federal immigration enforcement purposes. Since the enactment of these pieces of legislation, the Sheriff's Department has remained committed to developing and maintaining collaborative relationships with all stakeholders in an effort to build and strengthen public trust, effective policing, and ensure public safety. It has been 5 years since the previous immigration-related laws were enacted. However, the Sheriff's Department remains vigilant in educating our staff, both new and current staff, on changes in the department policies and standards as it relates to immigration laws. These policies include Section 6.47 immigration laws. This section restricts agency personnel and resources from collaborating in immigration enforcement. These policies also include Section Q4, which is the verification of legal status and conformance to immigration laws. This policy directs that no individual in custody would be delayed in the release process. All of our policies and procedures are available to the public on our public website at sdsheriff.gov. As a department, we have continued to use the internal forms and the automated data collection for the purposes of statistical reporting requirements to the California Department of Justice and local advocacy groups. I would like now to introduce our Detentions Processing Division Assistant Manager, Liliana Martinez Puentes, who will be presenting information on the data that has been maintained in relation to the Truth Act.
Good evening. Before we proceed with reporting on data associated with the Truth Act, I would like to provide a brief overview on the Sheriff's Detention Services Bureau's protocols as it relates to ICE. Outside law enforcement agencies, including Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents, do not have free access to sheriff's facilities or jails. ICE is required to check in via the primary entrance point and follow professional visitor guidelines. This allows the department to monitor and track ICE's access. If ICE would like to receive information on an individual or conduct an interview, request forms are submitted to the Jail Population Management Unit for review and compliance with state law. The Sheriff's Department will not transfer an individual to immigration authorities unless authorized by a judicial warrant or based upon a qualifying conviction as per state law. In compliance with California Government Code 7283.1, an individual is provided a J330 consent form that explains the purpose of the interview, that the interview is voluntary, that they may decline to be interviewed, and that they may choose to be interviewed only with their attorney present. The J335 form is used to notify the incarcerated person that ICE will be notified of their release date, whereas the J340 form is used to notify if a release date is not yet available. We provide forms J335 and J340 to not only the incarcerated person, but a copy is also provided to their attorney or their designated individual. This is a 5-year glance at ICE interview requests. In 2017, the department conducted manual tracking of interviews. In 2018, that transitioned to an electronic process. There was also a significant jump in J340 forms that occurred in 2018 based on Senate Bill 54 enactment. In 2019, despite a bump of J340 requests, there was a decline in interview requests, presumably because of a department policy change related to ICE's limited access to the facilities. ICE agents are now required to be checked in via the primary entrance point at each facility, as are all law enforcement officers, in addition to signing in and exchanging their government-issued ID for a facility visitor's pass. ICE agents are required to follow professional visitor guidelines. In 2020-2021, we experienced a significant decrease in activity based on the COVID-19 pandemic and ICE's practices relating to requests and interviews in the state of California. In January 2022, the Sheriff's Department released its data on 2021 ICE transfers and interviews. The released data indicated that 3 ICE interview requests were received in 2021. However, as a result of a department review, it was discovered that those 3 entries were mistakenly entered into our internal data system. No ICE requests or notifications were made, and no interviews took place. Additionally, no incarcerated persons were contacted as a result of these 3 logging errors. The Jail Information Management System experiences nearly 2 million entries in a year. The quality assurance process in place determined that the 3 separate incarcerated persons' profiles experienced erroneous drop-down data entries. These drop-down selections were mistakenly marked as an ICE interview request. Drop-down menu options consist of many data entry points that are not immigration or ICE related. The profiles were categorized as follows: 2, declined an interview; 1, agreed to an interview without an attorney present. To reiterate, despite these errors occurring, no incarcerated persons received notice of an ICE interview request, nor did any ICE interviews take place in 2021. Even though we have not experienced any ICE interview requests in the past 2 years, the Sheriff's Department still expanded the translated ICE interview consent forms with 2 new additions, Somali and Farsi, as a result of census data. In 2021, our Jail Population Management Unit received a total of 365 ICE notification requests. Of this amount, 275 requests were rejected as a result of an incarcerated person not meeting the necessary criteria under Senate Bill 54. However, 90 individuals were determined to have SB 54 qualifying charges, convictions, or criminal history. Therefore, the request was accepted. Examples of qualifying charges include attempted murder, child molestation, transport, import, or sales of narcotics, domestic violence with injury, and assault with a firearm, to name a few. The enactment of the Trust Act in 2014 began to change the manner in which authorities handled transfers and notification requests from ICE. It limited the number of crimes for which a jail could hold a person that ICE wanted to arrest, and amended the manner in which a transfer or notification request would be honored based on the crime that the person committed. The Truth Act in 2017 expanded on requirements that directed agencies to provide written documentation to an individual if ICE was requesting a notification be made upon release, and restricted open interviews with incarcerated persons for the purposes of immigration. Lastly, and most impactfully, SB 54, the California Values Act, prohibited state and local law enforcement from holding individuals on the basis of federal immigration detainers or transferring them into federal custody unless they had a previous qualifying conviction or were being held on a warrant from a federal judge. It also limited state and local law enforcement authorities from asking anyone about their immigration status and using agency resources to investigate or arrest people for federal immigration enforcement purposes. The evolution of these legislative changes contributed to the decrease of transfers to ICE, as it changed the manner in which these individuals were arrested, processed into custody, and released from our jurisdiction. This ultimately caused a reduction in releases over the years, as shown on this graph. (2021's release data features 18 individuals that were released to ICE. Of the 18 individuals released, all self-identified as being male, 17 identified as being Hispanic, and 1 is white. The top qualifying offenses for 2021 include 4 for the transport, import, or sale of controlled substances, 2 for the possession for sale of restricted or dangerous drugs, and 2 for the transport, import, sale of narcotics, including opiates and cocaine.
Thanks, Lily. For the past 5 years, there's been a significant collaboration with the community and stakeholders, such as the San Diego Immigrants' Rights Consortium, to help shape department policies and practices. Before you are a few of those progressive actions to demonstrate our commitment to balancing the rights of the community, the victims, and individuals in our custody. Despite COVID, we made certain to have an avenue engaging with our Spanish-speaking communities to stay connected with our department, and one of those was via the virtual Spanish Academy. In partnership with the San Diego County Office of Education Migrant Education Program and the Consul General of Mexico, our goal is to remove any possible barriers when it comes to the community safety. Knowledge is power, and knowing this, our 5-week academy covers topics such as know your rights, what to expect in a traffic stop, and drugs, gangs, and human trafficking. And the academy concluded with an in-person graduation at the end of the year. This first of its kind Spanish language Sheriff's Academy was the 2022 National Association of Counties, or the NACO Achievement Award winner, as the Academia del Alguacil was designed with cultural needs at the forefront, with curriculum and presentation entirely in Spanish, and built around recurring needs and themes communicated to and observed by our deputies in the communities. As for our immigrant and refugee community members, the Sheriff's Department has continued partnering with the International Rescue Committee, or the IRC, by providing monthly workshops online for our What to Expect series. The public safety workshops have been presented to members of the following communities: Congolese, Afghan, both Dari and Pashto, Syrian, and Iraqi over the past 2 years. The Sheriff's Department and the IRC team believe that any opportunity to talk directly with members of the Sheriff's Department to get answers to their questions and learn more about what services are provided is a wonderful step in helping to establish a relationship of respect and trust. What makes our county special is the drive of our diverse community members who rise to be local leaders and visionaries. In the last year, we have worked with several organizations that have joined us in our mission to connect with our diverse communities throughout the county. Dr. Beatriz Villarreal with the Mano a Mano Foundation is a pillar in the Latino community. She hosts workshops for parents, all in Spanish, and has been a wonderful partner with a similar mindset, connecting with community members in settings other than when facing an emergency is crucial to trust and keeping our communities safe. Crime reporting is still a fear for many of our communities, and we want to change that. Communicating directly with the residents is key in sharing the message that law enforcement cannot and will not contact ICE. It was not a practice in our department, and now there's a law that prevents this. Jovita Serevin, founder of the Guerreras en Acción por un Vista Limpio, or Warriors in Action for a Cleaner Vista, dedicates every Wednesday morning to walk around the neighborhood in Vista with her stroller, trash picker, and her sun hat to remove any visible trash. And she's amazing, just like so many people in our community. In being part of the solution and helping to clean, we are able to have in-depth conversations with the various community members that volunteer weekly. We know it takes all of us to build a community. We continue to create opportunities throughout the county and welcome other community members and groups to join us in the mission to empower the constituents of San Diego County. In closing, since the implementation of SB 54, I hope that as each year passes, it is evident to see that the Sheriff's Department is making intentional efforts to assess policies and procedures while working collaboratively with the community and stakeholders. All of this is needed to build on the progress we have made to build trust with the immigrant community. Chair Fletcher and members of the board, this concludes our presentation. We're available for any questions you may have, and we thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you to the Sheriff and those Holly and team involved in the presentation. I want to go to Vice Chair Vargas, who I believe is online. She has some introductory comments for us.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher, and thank you, Sheriff, and everyone else who did the presentation. I appreciate particularly the numbers that we see that the number of transfers have. The word that I think that you used today was being much more intentional about the reduction in transfers, and also making sure that we understand what the role of the sheriff is, and also who we are as a county, right? I think that in recent years, we've made it very clear that we want to improve how we interact with our immigrant communities, and we've established the First Office of Immigrant Affairs, Immigrant and Refugee Affairs, and we've inaugurated a welcome center. And I think we've gone above and beyond to show that we are a welcoming community. So I want to make sure that, that we, as we're moving forward, we keep this in mind. And I really appreciate all of the public and community partners who are going to be providing information today, and the questions as well. But I want to make sure that as we're moving forward and we have this conversation today about, that we really are aligning our values as a county, and that we are making sure that we really are thinking about what this looks like as we're moving forward. There is, I think, more than ever, an opportunity for us to do the right thing as a county, and I appreciate all the different initiatives that are taking place. And I think if there was a chart that was shown, right, about how the numbers have decreased in the last couple of years, and so I want to make sure that we can continue to do that, because I think it's really important for us that as a county we value. We keep talking about valuing equity and inclusion, and we have an Office of Equity and Racial Justice, and our board has championed, all of these different initiatives to make sure that when people are suffering or impacted by systemic racism, that we're doing something different. And so I want to make sure that our immigrants are treated with the same respect and dignity that they deserve as well. And so I'm looking forward to hearing the public comments today. And as we're looking at these numbers, I want to make sure that we do everything in our power to make sure that we continue to stay in step with SB 54, because it is the only way that we're going to be able to do right by our communities, especially the fact that we are in a binational region. And so I look forward to hearing from our communities and hearing their different perspectives. But again, I want to say that I am hopeful because I have seen how the numbers have changed and what we're trying to be intentional about in making sure that we're doing right by our communities as well. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Before we go to public comment, I want to remind everyone here, according to the rules of procedures, speakers that are here are welcome. Their voice will be respected and everything they have to say will be heard. There will be no interrupting from members of the audience. There will be no clapping, no booing, no hissing, no cheering. We're going to respect everyone's right to come to the podium and say whatever it is that they would like to say, consistent with the First Amendment and our protected speech of individuals who are here. I know we will conduct ourselves in an orderly fashion, recognizing how seriously and deeply held the positions and issues are. So with that, I'm going to turn over to the clerk to begin our public comments for tonight.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 58 requests to speak, 41 in person and 17 requesting to speak by phone. We also have one group presentation in support. Also note for the record that we received 90 e-comments on this item, 74 in favor, 4 in opposition, and 1 neutral. We'll begin with the group presentation in favor. You'll have 10 minutes to address the board. All 3 members of the group must speak during that 10 minutes. I'll ask you to please self-regulate your time with the timer on the podium. And as a reminder, each person in the group may speak for no more than 4 minutes. As you come forward, I'll ask you to please state your name before you begin your presentation. I'd like to invite forward the group that includes Robert Vivar, Monica Langarica, and Dulce Garcia. So if each of you could please come forward and state your name at the podium. And then you may.
Robert Vivar.
Thank you.
Dulce Garcia.
Thank you.
Monica Langarica.
Great, thank you. You may begin your presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the Board of Supervisors and of the San Diego County Sheriff's Office. We are here again this year, as we've been in years past, at our county's Truth Act Forum, because San Diego and the San Diego Sheriff's Office have refused to stop colluding with immigration and customs enforcement. Instead of following the lead of several other counties in California, including Los Angeles, San Francisco, San Mateo, Santa Clara, and others, our Sheriff's Office has chosen to continue voluntarily handing our community members over to the crosshairs of ICE. This is unacceptable. The first way that the Sheriff's Office colludes with ICE is by complying with ICE's detainer transfer requests voluntarily, as you heard just a moment ago. This means that when a non-citizen individual, family member, father, son, is eligible for release from county custody, whether that's by court order or because the law enforcement agency has dropped charges, instead of releasing that person, our Sheriff's Office hands that person over to ICE, again, voluntarily. And as you've heard this past year, they did that with 18 people, 18 families torn apart, 18 lives disrupted. Next slide, please. As you know, and as you heard today, SB 54, the California Values Act, limits the instances in which the Sheriff's Office is permitted to voluntarily transfer people over to ICE. But it does not require transfers. Nothing requires these kinds of transfers absent a judicial warrant. The Sheriff's Office justifies the transfers that it continues to conduct by the nature of the underlying criminal charges. But as you might be able to see, for those in the audience, the San Diego Sheriff's Office releases far more people who are non-immigrants with the same charges or convictions on their release dates, people with the exact same charges as non-citizens. In fact, for every non-citizen that the Sheriff's Office transferred to ICE in 2021, it released 111 citizens with the exact same charges. That's because that's how the criminal system works. That's what due process means. You make a mistake, you serve your time, and you rejoin your community when all is said and done. Next slide, please. Except our county doesn't believe in that due process or justice in the criminal system for the 18 people it transferred over to ICE this year. Choosing to treat people differently based on their immigration status does not align with the values that our county purports to hold proudly, values of inclusion, of equity, and of welcoming. Next slide, please. The Sheriff's Office also voluntarily complies with ICE requests to be notified of individual release dates. These notifications put people on ICE's radar, which facilitates ICE showing up to arrest them, whether it's in the parking lot or in court, when they otherwise should be released to rejoin their families and communities. This year, it complied with 80 or 90 of those requests. This is unacceptable. Next slide, please. Before I pass it over to my colleague Dulce, I will remind this body and the sheriff that SB 54 permits law enforcement agencies to transfer certain individuals to ICE custody and to notify of release dates, but it does not require it. Nothing stands in the way of our county to follow the lead of other counties in California in choosing to reject this kind of collusion. And I'll pass it over to Dulce.
Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Edgar Saul Garcia Cardoso was born May 29, 1984. His life was destroyed the moment he was racially profiled and turned over to ICE. He passed away September 8, 2022. Edgar was just 3 years old when he came to the U.S. undocumented. He had such a beautiful heart and was very much loved by family and the community. He played varsity soccer and ran cross country in San Diego High School. He transmitted his passion for soccer to the kids that he coached at Memorial Park in our underserved neighborhood. In the last 9 years, he ran the Rock and Roll Marathon. He was a Star Wars fan, a comics fan, and every year he would go to Comic-Con. He remained a Chargers fan even after they left. He had so many talents. He was a bartender, a plumber, a business owner, and the family barber. No matter how old I was, he was always concerned about me because I was always a sister. And despite not having any papers and already having an order of deportation, he took me across the country to make sure that I made it safely to law school. And once I was there, he ensured that I had everything for my first day of school. We had such a strong bond. We even shared classes together in elementary and high school. My mom would force us to join the marching band and go to school dances together and to look out for each other. We would share our dreams. As adults, we played co-ed indoor soccer, and being the amazing soccer player and the good brother, he would set it up so that I would score. He taught me to live in the moment. We went skydiving together, kayaking, despite our fears. And this year, when I got COVID, he took care of me. He cooked for me, made sure that I slowed down in between Zoom meetings, and he would decorate my plate with flowers carved from tomatoes. All of the voice recordings that I have of him are him goofing around trying to make me smile. But he was in pain. Next slide. Racial profiling and unjust laws led to his immigration detention in 2006. He was dehumanized. He was placed in a detention center where he was stripped of his name, given an alien registration number that he would from there on be referred to. He was given shoes with no shoelaces so that he wouldn't commit suicide in that horrible place. He lost so much weight in just 2 months and looked disheveled. The arrest and the intake process led him to being flagged for ICE. He was charged and eventually pled with driving with a suspended license. As a result, ICE knew exactly where to find him when he arrived to the courthouse for his trial and deported him within hours. When I received the call from him, it was too late. He was already in Tijuana. In Mexico, he was kidnapped, held for ransom, and tortured for 8 months until he finally escaped. He was able to return to the U.S. on May 2021 under asylum protections. He tried to live despite all the trauma.
I'm so sorry. Can I pause your time? I'm so sorry. In the front row, your conduct is disrupting the conduct of the meeting. Please sit in your seat and listen to the speakers, or you can feel free to wait outside. Your outbursts are disrupting the conduct of the meeting. It's your second warning. Your continued outraps. One more and you're gone. One more and you're gone. Stop disrupting the proceedings of the meeting.
Yes, sir. Husbands was...
Audrey, your outbursts are disrupting the conduct of the meeting. Your first warning. Audrey, your conducts are disrupting the process of the meeting. Third warning. Audrey, this is your third warning. Please escort Audrey Morgan out of the chambers.
Her husband was murdered.
Please escort Audrey Morgan out of the chambers.
11 months he was murdered by the protocols that you're passing.
Your conduct is disrupting the proceedings of this meeting. You can go too.
You're killing people.
The Board of Supervisors will take a brief recess while these individuals are removed from the chamber, then we will come back. I apologize to all the members of the public who are here for the disturbance, for the interruption in particular. I apologize to the lady who was in the middle of a very heartfelt and emotional testimony. Please accept our apologies for the disturbance. Moving forward, the rules of procedure will be enforced, and they will be enforced fairly, and they will be enforced without exception. I trust we can get through the remainder of our meeting with everyone participating and being respectful of the proceedings. Again, ma'am, I apologize for interrupting your testimony, and we will pick your time back up where it was.
Thank you, Chair. Edgar was able to return to the U.S. on May 2021 under asylum protections. And he tried to live despite all the trauma, but couldn't cope with the pain. Edgar would cry in the middle of his sleep, scream. He was triggered by confined spaces, and he would think he was being followed, and he was afraid of people finding him and killing him. Edgar passed away September 8, 2022. I lost my younger brother, and my youngest brother, Chris, lost his older brother. He's here today. And so is my mom. My mom lost the person that has loved her the most in this world, the one that was always kind to her, never raised his voice at her, and always showed respect for her. Edgar was thoughtful and kind and forgiving. This world lost so much that day. It was one life, but it mattered. I wish that there was a way that you could see through my eyes the harm that you have caused by colluding with ICE, the undescribable pain, the immeasurable loss. And you cannot wash your hands by blaming the federal government of our inhumane immigration system. It is not enough to say that we have improved. You're choosing to participate actively in this system by transferring people to ICE. The collusion with DHS endangers our families, especially because we are in a border town. And each and every life, despite what those numbers are showing today, is precious. So we're saying, my family present today, my community is saying, not one more. Edgar was loved, and his life mattered.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Robert Vivar. I was allowed to return legally to the U.S. on Veterans Day, November 11, 2021, after I was impacted not only with an ICE notification, but also an ICE transfer. When I was arrested on ICE, an ICE notification prevented me to post bail, thus affecting the finances of my household. The ICE hold prevented me from participating in programs such as substance abuse. And the ICE transfer, once completed my sentence, held me in immigration detention, consequently deporting me without the opportunity of proper legal counsel, thus leaving a financial burden on my spouse, my U.S. citizen children, my son who is currently serving in the California Air National Guard, and my grandchildren. Our home went into foreclosure, left my spouse, daughter, and granddaughters without a home. ICE transfers have a ripple effect on families who are mostly U.S. citizens, placing them in not only severe financial stress, but also affects them emotionally. The trauma of seeing a parent deported or at risk of deportation is creating irreparable stress on our kids, which is revealed in deteriorating learning abilities. In school, those persons eligible for release have paid their debt and demonstrated not to be a danger to their community, or else they would not be eligible for release. Greater threat is the lack of trust the community has of law enforcement when they are being victimized. I want to congratulate Sheriff-elect Martinez and ask her as she begins her tenure to help us achieve the community trust of law enforcement from the community by ending all notifications and transfers to ICE. Thank you.
Thank you.
Conclude our presentation just by urging the board and the sheriff's office once more to immediately stop transfers to ICE, stop notifying ICE of release dates, and stop allowing DHS access to county facilities, including parking lots in the jail. Full stop. It's time. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the individual speakers. Any members of the public that requested to speak on this item by phone, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. We'll begin with the in-person speakers, those in favor of this item. As your name is called, please come forward and stand against the east wall under the murals until it is your turn to speak. I'll be calling you in groups of 5, so please listen for your name. If I don't call you, we'll be getting to you, so please be patient. I'd like to invite forward the following individuals: Carol Stevenson, Nika Nora Montenegro, Eitan Peled, Aaron Suramoto Grassi, and Mary Niez. If I've called your name, please come forward, and you may come forward in any order, and I'll ask you to please state your name for the audio record, and you'll have 2 minutes to address the board.
My name is Carol Stevenson, and I'm here with Jewish Family Service of San Diego, Immigration Department where I work. I see on a daily basis how an extremely complicated and convoluted immigration system impacts our community, trying to navigate all of the pitfalls and intricacies of the law. And we see how easy it can be to be caught up in that system, and access to even a short consultation can take months. Simple mistakes or misunderstandings can result in dire immigration consequences. So the last Truth Act forum that I was at was in Santa Clara County, where I'm from, where I lived until a couple of years ago. And that was mentioned as one of the really strong places for separation of local law enforcement with ICE. And I remember at that forum learning about how the safest communities across the country are those that have the strongest separations between local law enforcement and ICE. So the sheriff's policy of transferring individuals to ICE and notifying ICE of release date operates in this system. It results in double punishment and creates a separate justice system for immigrants. It's against San Diego County's commitment to racial justice and equity and the framework for the future of San Diego County. We at JFS urge the Board of Supervisors to call upon the sheriff to immediately stop ICE transfers and notifications. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon, Board of Supervisors and the Sheriff Department. I am Nika Nora Montenegro, and I am representing at this time the PWC, or the Filipino Workers Center. The Filipino Workers Center is a 501c organization that is helping workers, particularly immigrants. And we are here as an organization together with our members and our organization alliances and partners to say that we are demanding that the Sheriff Department be honest and truthful and stop the transfer and giving information of those who are ever under your custody to the ICE. I would like to give us an example, because we are protecting or advocating a lot of immigrants. You have to understand that not all immigrants are here because they want to. A lot of immigrants that we are helping right now are here because they are victims of human trafficking, and they have nowhere to go but to us, especially the Filipinos. And in the process of helping them, we got to understand how important immigrants are in this country in terms of economy, but the issues and concern that they are suffering. I would like to give us an example. We have one member. He is a caregiver. He was doing his work well, but he was unjustly actually judged for a crime that he has not really done. But anyway, the person had already...
Thank you.
The first...
Thank you. Your time is up. We'll now hear from the next speaker. Thank you.
Good evening. Aaron Suramoto, Policy Director at Alliance San Diego. On behalf of Alliance San Diego, I urge the sheriff and the sheriff-elect to stop ICE transfers and notifications and to stop allowing ICE access to county property. Before I begin, I want to note that while we have a very large crowd here tonight, there were many more who could not make it who signed a petition that we circulated. And I've got that petition with me right now, and so I'll make sure that you get a copy of it. We had over 250 people sign it when I printed it out at noon, and since then I've just continued to get notifications indicating how many people want transfers to stop. As you've seen from the presentation that my colleagues gave earlier, there is no moral justification for ICE transfers and notifications. Transfers and notifications result in a dual justice system in which immigrants are punished more than U.S. citizens for the exact same crimes, simply because they are not born here. You've also heard about the devastating impact that just one transfer has, and I have to thank my colleagues who shared those stories. This doesn't have to happen. The sheriff can choose to join 7 other counties, which have already stopped this practice. And it's actually about to be 8 counties, since the Alameda County Sheriff-elect has pledged to stop transfers. At the end of the day, if our county is serious about equity, justice, and inclusion, ICE transfers and notifications must stop. We cannot have 2 justice systems based on where people are born. We urge the sheriff and the sheriff-elect to end ICE transfers and notifications immediately.
Thank you. As the next speaker is coming forward, I'd like to invite 5 additional speakers: Yusuf Miller, Ian Ceriello, Beth Johnson, Patricia Mondragon, and Lillian Serrano. If I've called your name, please come forward.
Good evening, Chair Fletcher and board. San Diego County needs to impose a hard line between local law enforcement and U.S. federal immigration control. Our neighbors and our communities need to feel safe and comfortable with local law enforcement and be able to report crimes and cooperate. The current policies prevent that.
Can you please state your name for the audio record?
Excuse me, Mary Nees.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any encounter with ICE based on information shared by the San Diego County Sheriff's Department and without a prohibition on this information sharing and transfer could split, they fear, and rightly so as you see, could split their families and upend their children's and families' lives. 18 families had their lives upended this year. Think of the ripple throughout our communities. You can protect our community members better by limiting your efforts to local law enforcement, not federal immigration. There should be a hard line. You as the board can impose this hard line statutorily, and I implore you to do that. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is Eitan Peled. I'm a Coronado resident and a student at the University of San Diego. Sheriff Ray, we are here today to ask that you stop collaborating with ICE, that you stop the transfers, that you stop the notifications, and that you stop giving them access to your facilities. You're doing each of these 3 things makes the community less safe. First, you said so yourself. It's preventing people from reaching out when they need help to your own office. So first, the transfers. That's 18 folks that you mentioned yourself that you've transferred directly to ICE. ICE, a federal agency that is a stain on the human rights record in our community. Remember, it's not long ago that they ripped babies from their parents' arms just because they came to seek asylum. Second, stop notifying them when, stop the 90 folks that you notified. That notification system is also voluntary. So that's 90 people that you notified ICE about their release and then gave them the ability to go stalk these individuals in their homes, which makes them feel less safe in our community. Remember, these are individuals, this is all voluntary. You do not have to be doing this. There are individuals with the same charges that you've released into the community without notifying ICE, creating this dual justice system. And finally, stop giving them access to your facilities. ICE, as I mentioned, is an agency that does horrible, horrible things. And by inviting them into your facility, you are making them feel less safe, making the community feel less safe. By transferring individuals to ICE and notifying ICE about the release after your office has done their job, it is an indication that you yourself don't believe in the system that you're operating within. If you trust the system within which you're operating, when folks are released, they should be able to reintegrate with their communities. Do you then not trust your own officers to follow up, or your own team to keep us safe? And if you don't believe in if you don't trust your team to keep us safe, then why should we? Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is Ian Cervello. I'm with the Asia Pacific American Labor Alliance and also sits in the advisory board of the San Diego Immigrant Rights Consortium. I'm also an immigration attorney. I have my own firm, and I work with a lot of nonprofit organizations trying to help our immigrant and refugee community. As an attorney, as an immigration attorney, I see firsthand the impact of this policy is to my clients. I see every day how these kinds of policy affects the family, affects the children, affects the spouse, affects the partner, affects the children especially. And like the lady earlier from the Filipino Worker Center, he's talking about the spouse of a member of the organization, and that person is actually a client of mine who was recently released from incarceration and was transferred to ICE. And once he was released, he was again detained, being punished once again for the same offense, and the impact to the family, to the spouse, is really deep. And having been separated from your family for a long time, and then here you go, you are released, taking responsibility for your action, yet upon release you will be detained again for several weeks or months. So this is unacceptable. This is unacceptable, and we call and we implore on the Board of Supervisors, on the Sheriff's Department to end this policy and stop this collusion with the Department of Homeland Security, and that, not one more. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. I'm the Reverend Dr. Beth Johnson. I serve on the board of the Unitarian Universalist Refugee and Immigrant Services and Education and the San Diego Immigrant Rights Consortium Advisory Board. I'm glad to be able to speak with you this evening. However, you have already heard the stories of heartbreak, of loss, of fear, of uncertainty. The question that I'm asking is, who have we been, who are we now, and who are we called to be? If there is an option, you are not compelled to make ICE transfers, to notify ICE. So as we listen to the stories of individuals, the numbers look good. But there are people behind even what may seem like a few numbers or lesser numbers. You've heard the effect from attorneys, from family members, of the impact of these ICE notifications and transfers on families and individuals. If there is no need, then why? So the question I would really leave you with is why? And who are we called to be in this moment, at this time, in San Diego County, to be just, to be loving, to be compassionate, to be understanding, and to be on the forefront of honoring the inherent worth and dignity of every person, no matter where they were born, because everybody belongs. Everyone matters. So I implore you, just end the notifications and stop the ICE transfers. You can do this. Let it happen. Thank you.
Good evening, Supervisors, Sheriff. My name is Patricia Mondragon. I'm a resident of D4 and a lifelong San Diegan, and also the daughter of 2 Mexican immigrants. Even though my parents were both legal permanent residents, as a child living in the border region, I never felt safe, and I carried a fear that my parents could be deported for very minimal reasons. And in fact, I have had family members that have been deported and subsequently killed in Mexico. As you've heard from Dulce, her agonizing story, and others like Robert, the impact of harmful policies are real and deeply personal. For American immigrant families, not only in our border region, but even beyond. Folks are rehabilitated and released back to supporting communities every day. Reverend Beth mentioned that the numbers look good, and so they do on the chart. However, you know, when you look at the real numbers of the releases compared to those that are actually transferred to ICE, those numbers don't look very good. Over 100 of folks with the same exact convictions are released back into communities. They're not transferred to ICE. The only difference is where they were born. Is that fair? Is that equitable? The only difference is where you were born. To me, that is an unfair practice that creates distrust and unsafe communities. ICE transfers and notifications must end. We don't want even a single one more, because as you can see in Dulce's situation, one more could have been Edgar, her brother. Thank you. Please end ICE transfers.
Thank you. As the next speaker is coming forward, I'd like to invite 5 additional speakers: Elsie Silva, Tomas Perez, Flower Alvarez Lopez, Donna Yercia Rodriguez, and Mona Kuzensky. If I've called your name, please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Lilian Serrano. I'm an Escondido resident and co-director with Universidad Popular. Today, I'm here to speak to you on behalf of my family, the many communities members who I work with in North County and my organization. I'm here because I have witnessed with my own eyes how our policies of colluding with immigration enforcement has separated many families in our region. My own niece and nephew are currently growing up without their biological dad because of our decision, or local law enforcement decision, to transfer and notify ICE every time an immigrant is caught up in their system. I speak with many families, many stories. You see, this story is way too common in my community. All of us can tell you at least one person who has been caught up in that system, one family who has been torn apart. One family is one family way too many. Our own sheriff department has recognized that there is mistrust in the immigrant community towards the department. They just shared with us how they go into efforts to build trust. Well, we've been telling you how to build trust. You can start by treating every San Diegan the same. We can start by treating everybody, regardless of where they were born, the same. That message, every time we ask you to end transfers, to end notifications, and to end all collaboration, we're asking you to treat every community member the same, regardless of where they were born, to value every family, regardless of where they were born, and to ensure that all of our county policies reflect our values. Colluding with immigration enforcement does not reflect our values. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Hello, good evening. My name is Elsie Silva, and I'm a licensed clinician who has been providing psychotherapy to undocumented individuals and families throughout my career. I've heard countless stories, and you're hearing some now, from those who have been directly and or indirectly impacted by punitive policing practices, detainment, and deportation. As you've heard, individuals who are undocumented or have family members who are living with a constant fear of legal entanglement and deportation. This fear, this distress, this feeling of powerlessness and need for hypervigilance increases the likelihood of trauma and other mental health-related concerns. It's also important to remember, as some have already mentioned, that children of undocumented immigrants are at much higher risk for psychological trauma, abandonment, and distress. We are here today to ask the San Diego Sheriff's Department to stop being an added layer of trauma within our communities, to stop colluding with ICE, and to understand that protecting and serving also means you are making ethically responsible decisions that encompass the psychological well-being of those you are here to protect and serve. Not one more.
Hello, good evening. My name is Flower Alvarez Lopez. I'm from North County, San Diego, District 5, and I'm a co-director at Universidad Popular. I sit here and I hear the claim that your job is to be protecting our community. Yet this practice traumatizes and harms our community. When I first started coming to the board meetings years ago, I was green and naive. And I thought you would all make bold decisions because it would be the right thing to do. Now I know better. As Dulce was speaking, I tried so hard to hold back tears, right? I'm tough, I'm strong, I don't cry in public. I couldn't because I understood her pain. The person that I was supposed to raise my daughter with was transferred, deported, and killed in Tijuana, and returned to his family in a box. That's the life that my daughter has had to live without a fatherless life. So my message here to the community and also to Dulce, who's behind me, is that I do stand with you, and I agree, not one more.
Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Tomas Perez. The Board of Supervisors and the Sheriff's Department today have heard all the public comment that details how the Sheriff's collusion with ICE is not based on any legal obligation, and SB 54 does not mandate your notifications and transfers. Sheriff's collusion with ICE is also not based in any moral obligation, because others who are U.S. citizens who have served their time for their offenses are able to return to their lives. It is only to your discretion that immigrants are not given that opportunity to return to their lives. So to the current sheriff and sheriff-elect, if you do not have a legal obligation and no moral obligation, then admit that it is only your racist discretion that you voluntarily take part in ICE transfers, or you can end the transfers. Thank you.
As the next speaker is coming forward, I'd like to invite 5 additional speakers: Judith Voss, David Vance, Margaret Baker, Christina Maniquil, and Eric Alfonso.
My name is Yusef Miller, and I'm a supporter of the San Diego Immigrant Rights Consortium, and I'm here to stand with the families that have been torn apart by collusion with ICE. We've seen spouses, we've heard of children, we've heard of parents who have been torn apart by their family members being taken out from ICE. And we seem to be handicapped by saying that if they're ICE, they're federal, and there's nothing we can do for it, hands off. All we can do is sit in front of a row of deputies and sheriffs and hear what their half has to say. But we have the power to remove ICE from our parking lots, from stalking our loved ones in parking lots and drop-off points, which is a loophole to grabbing our people off the streets. And when they grab our people off the streets, they're not just incarcerating a person, they're incarcerating a family. They're not just losing the life of a loved one when they send them and deporting them, they're tearing the heart out of a family member. This is not a small deal we're talking about. These people came out here tonight, came out here today to stand here to say that these people who have their hearts torn out are our family members. They are human beings. No matter what their situation is, no matter what their condition is or their immigration status is, that they're family and they should be treated as such. We should not be looking over our shoulder when it comes to ICE. We should not be sitting and having a narrow view or a slanted view of the situation by only hearing from what's going on in the Sheriff's Department. Yes, we've seen slides. Yes, we've seen bars. Yes, we've seen a lot of information on how the transfers have dropped. But are we dealing with the loopholes that cause our family members to be ripped in half? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mona Kaczynski. I'm so deeply, deeply moved by the testimony tonight, and I'm sure that you are as well. The reality is that none of us are safe unless all of us are safe. And you have the power to direct the Sheriff's Department to make us all safer. I implore the Board of Supervisors to please direct the Sheriff's Department to stop colluding and cooperating unnecessarily with ICE. Not one more transfer. Please, thank you.
Good evening, supervisors. My name is David Vance, pronouns they, them, and I'm here this evening on behalf of the San Diego LGBT Community Center to voice our concerns regarding the Sheriff Department's ongoing partnerships with ICE and the Department of Homeland Security. These continued collaborations, including the Sheriff Department's policy of transferring individuals to ICE and notifying ICE when individuals are released from jail, do not align with San Diego County's commitment to racial justice and equity, and they undermine the county's investment in immigrants, including the $5 million Immigrant Legal Defense Program it launched earlier this year. The Sheriff Department's partnerships with ICE and DHS have resulted in the deportation and detention of 98 community members this year alone. The real fear of detention and deportation creates mistrust of both local law enforcement and local government and prevents people from accessing essential resources they need, such as COVID vaccines, HIV testing, and Mpox vaccines. The real fear of detention and deportation prevents victims and witnesses of crimes from filing a report with law enforcement. The direct coordination with ICE leading to deportations and detentions makes our communities less safe, not safer. 7 other counties across the state of California have already recognized the injustice of ICE transfers and notifications and have ended this harmful practice. Tonight, I urge the Board of Supervisors to docket a board letter doing the same. We must do everything we can to immediately stop ICE transfers in future partnerships with DHS agencies. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Judith Voss, and I'm an organizer with Planned Parenthood Action Fund of the Pacific Southwest. And I am the daughter of Jamaican immigrants. ICE facilities across our state and country have long been accused of withholding information, creating unsafe living conditions, withholding gender-affirming care, and exploiting the bodies of our community members. Last year, the ACLU National said there have been documented patterns of abuse, mistreatment, and misconduct at the Otay Mason Detention Center here in San Diego County. The sheriff's policy of transferring individuals to ICE and notifying ICE of release dates results in double punishment and creates a separate justice system for immigrants. This runs counter to San Diego County's commitment to racial justice and equity, as well as the framework for the future of San Diego County. We urge the Board of Supervisors to call upon the sheriff to immediately stop ICE transfers and notifications. Immigration justice is reproductive justice.
Good evening. My name is Margaret Baker. I live in District 4 and represent South Bay People Power. At each annual Truth Act Forum, community members from around the county have testified with a nearly unanimous voice to call out the many ways the San Diego Sheriff Department circumvents state laws like SB 54 and defies local policies and promises of a welcoming, just, and safe environment for all members of our county. At last year's forum, the former sheriff again refused to stop colluding with ICE and other federal agencies, stating he was just trying to find middle ground, strike a balance among stakeholders. But his position was a choice. It was wrong, destructive, and deadly. Moreover, it has further damaged community trust in local government. Tonight, we demand that the new sheriff heed our calls to immediately stop the transfers, notifications, and other ways this department is colluding with ICE and other federal agencies. Not one more.
As the next speaker is coming forward, I'd like to invite 5 additional speakers. Kai Guman, Tammy Carroll, Alexis Durbin, Benjamin Prado, and Reverend Seth Clark.
Hello, my name is Christina Manankil. I'm the Associate Director of Asian Solidarity Collective. As a grassroots organization of over 730 members and growing, when you hear me speak, multiply that. As we are in solidarity with community members and families that continue to be separated from their loved ones, stop sharing info, data, resources with DHS, ICE, and stop with the joint task forces that create lack of transparency and accountability and trust. We are expected to rely on the systems that tear families apart and dehumanize our people. Truth is, these actions are what we must fight against in order to survive and in order for our families to be safe. These barriers and shade are nothing new, and until there are actions that lead to equity and community care and safety, you will continue to hear us over and over.
My name is Eric Alfonso. I'm a youth member of Asian Solidarity Collective. We demand that the sheriff stop transferring community members to ICE and stop using county resources that aid in the detention, deportation, and separation of families in our community. Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman Fletcher and supervisors, and to Representative Ray. My name is Kai Guzman. I pronouns are they, them, him, it. I'm an organizer with the ACLU of San Diego and Imperial Counties, the ACLU as a member of the San Diego Immigrant Rights Consortium. San Diego County residents deserve to live in a region where families stay together and do not have to live in fear that an encounter with law enforcement will result in a deportation. We are here tonight because the San Diego County Sheriff's Department's collaboration with DHS puts our immigrant community at risk. The Sheriff's Department routinely, directly, and indirectly transfers county residents into immigration custody. By collaborating with ICE and other immigration enforcement agencies, the Sheriff's Department exposes our immigrant families, our friends, our coworkers, and our neighbors to immigration detention and deportation that can result in permanent family separations like my own. In the past year, this collaboration has resulted in the deportation of 18 members of our community and potentially 80 more, according to the data reported by the Sheriff's Department. Every year, for the last 5 years, the ACLU and our community partners have attended these Truth Act meetings asking for the Sheriff's Department to stop this collaboration with DHS, stop transferring county residents into ICE custody, and stop being complicit in detaining and deporting county residents. It's time to end this collaboration. We urge the county and the Sheriff's Department to immediately stop using local resources to facilitate DHS deadly detention and deportation machine. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
As the next speaker is coming forward, I'd like to invite 5 additional speakers: Patricia Serrano, Maria Chavez, Beryl Flom, Tama Becker Verano, and Yolanda Meneses. If I've called your name, please come forward.
Hello, Chair, Supervisors, Sheriff. My name is Reverend Seth Clark, and I am an American Baptist minister. And you know what? I'm not going to preach at you tonight. I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to ask maybe 2 questions. But both are, and this is for the audience too, the public. What if the county sheriff's department stopped sharing information with DHS? What if? Do you feel fear? Do you feel hope? What do you think might happen? What do you think the County of San Diego might be like? And what if it's better? What if we could make our home on these borderlands better by stopping the transfer of people? What if we can make it better by stopping cooperation with DHS? What if? We've heard a lot of stories already. We'll hear some more, I imagine. As we listen to our hearts and our minds and the moral compass inside, I hope we have the courage to answer what if with a brighter future for our region. Thank you so much.
Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is Patricia Serrano. And
If you can pull the mic down, please. Thank you.
Thank you. So my name is Patricia Serrano, and I'm an Escondido resident, and I work with PANA in San Diego. As a long Escondido resident, I have witnessed the damage, the deportation due to my community. In Escondido, I witnessed for years the systematic targeting of longtime members of our communities, where police, sheriffs collaborate with ICE and tear apart children from their parents. I have many stories to tell about that. I also witnessed the damage that the collaboration with the police and DHS does to the perception of the community, where communities who need help and protection from the law enforcement are afraid to call, and leading to abuse and victimization. Please, do not use more resources for our county to help the dirty work of ICE. People are dying in detention centers, and it's not a secret. Please do what is moral for our community. Please listen to this community that you serve, and you think you serve, but you're doing a damage to our community.
Thank you. My name is Maria Chavez, and I am Vice Chair Vargas's constituent. I'm a local immigration attorney, the chair of the San Diego chapter of the American Immigration Lawyers Association. I sit on the advisory board of the San Diego Immigrant Rights Consortium, among numerous other legal and community leadership positions. Through my work, I promote the county's vision of welcoming immigrants through the Immigrant Legal Defense Fund and the Office for Immigrant and Refugee Assistance. But yet, this is the third Truth Act forum that I have personally attended, and that's 3 too many. I've witnessed firsthand how my clients, friends, colleagues, and fellow community members are torn apart and the negative impact this ICE collusion has on them. I see families suffer because of the threat of deportation and then help them pick up the pieces after the deportation. As we've heard, community members are taken from their family and dumped into a country that they often don't know or remember and then are brutally harmed. It's time to stop all transfers and collusion and aiding the deportation machine. Not one more.
As the next speaker is coming forward, I'd like to invite 5 additional speakers: Carlos Hernandez, Paulina Reyes, Margaret Cargioli, Celeste Catone, and Gabriel Guzman.
Hi, my name is Tama Becker-Verano, and I'm speaking on behalf of Change Begins With Me, an indivisible chapter in District 3. I'd like to point out that this forum really shines a light on context. When the Sheriff's Department goes first and, it's followed up by Supervisor Vice Chair Vargas, we saw what she saw. We saw on the charts that the numbers are going down year after year, and it looks good. It looks like it's a good thing. It looks all completely hunky-dory. And then, those improvements, we have to remind folks that those happened because people demanded it. It happened because people are watching, and that you know that they are watching, and this did not take place before SB 54. So the people, as much as the Sheriff's Department listening, it's the people who are pushing this, and it's the people who are continuing to show up. So then we get our other friends from SDIRC, and they come with their own chart, and you wonder, why are we seeing this information from them? If this is a transparency forum, why is it that the Sheriff's Department isn't sharing this same information? And you're getting both sides of the story, and that's really important. We can see the disparity between immigrants, migrants, and non-migrants being released or detained and deported. So what do we get from all of this? You share your story, and then look at all these people who show up. This shows me that there is a huge disconnect between what you're telling us here today, what actions you're taking within the department, and what the people in the community are actually experiencing. And then you get stories. Stories are so important. We really need to hear people's stories, and it's so brave of Dulce and others to get up here and re-experience the trauma that they've experienced. Am I almost done? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
I'm Beryl Flom. I chair the Immigration and Deportation Committee for the League of Women Voters, and this testimony is from both the city and North County leagues. The League of Women Voters is a strong proponent of government transparency, and we commend the Board of Supervisors for holding a Truth Act forum to provide the public with information about San Diego County Sheriff Department's interactions with ICE. The League of Women Voters believes that immigration policy should promote reunification of immediate families. We urge the sheriff to stop separating families through ICE transfers and notifications, and to prevent access to county property, including parking lots. In addition, the League of Women Voters encourages cities and counties to enact privacy and technology use ordinances that protect privacy and other civil liberties. San Diego County currently uses automated license plate readers. The Sheriff's Department shares this information with 4 other agencies and the LEARN database, with little oversight as to what information ICE or other immigration agencies receive. We recommend the Sheriff's Department limit data sharing to the San Diego County Shared Database, ARJIS. The League of Women Voters also supports law enforcement policies that build public trust and positive community relationships between police and community members. Community members are less likely to call local law enforcement if they believe a loved one might end up in ICE or Border Patrol custody. We look forward to continued conversation with the incoming Sheriff Martinez as we work together to keep families united, protect privacy and other civil liberties, and to build public trust and community safety. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Carlos Hernandez, and I am a member of ACE, and I'm here today to urge you to stop transfers to ICE. Just last month, one of our group's members was stopped in his own driveway as he was returning home from a long day of work. He was subjected to cruel treatment while in detention, where he was intimidated into leaving the country without putting up a fight. He was told that if he wanted to go through the court process, the consequences would only be worse for him and his family. Earnestly believing the law enforcement that had kidnapped him, he was misled and chose to leave his adopted country after decades of labor without even speaking to a proper attorney. After being deported to Tijuana, where he knew no one, he went to Mexico City with family in hopes that one day he would be able to see his family again. A couple of weeks ago, I called his family to check how they were doing, and I was informed that he had contacted an infection and passed away only days earlier. He will never again see his wife, his sons, or daughters. His grandchildren will never get to meet their grandfather. Do you understand what that feels like, Sheriff? Would you like your family to see you shackled and taken away in your own driveway? You're killing us. Do you understand the ripple effects and generational trauma that his family will now have to deal with? There's blood in your hands. I am convinced that your office is a societal ill, that you are a bad actor in society, and I hope that you know that your descendants will know the truth about you in the history books, and they will have to carry your shame.
Good evening. My name is Paulina Reyes Peraris. I am an immigration attorney at Immigrant Defenders Law Center, a nonprofit social justice firm. I also serve on the advisory board of SCIRC, and I have family that are longtime residents of San Diego and live in District 4. I urge the sheriff to stop colluding with ICE, to stop sharing information and data with ICE, and stop all ICE transfers. By continuing this practice, you are doing so purposely, intentionally, and contrary to the community that you serve. You've heard stories of firsthand accounts about how this voluntary practice by the Sheriff's Department has affected all of us. The community is here and present and urging our elected officials to stop working with ICE and furthering the harmful practices of tearing apart families and communities. Not one more.
As the next speaker is coming forward, I'd like to invite 5 additional speakers. Bedowies Villarreal, Chad Adapon, AJ Hover, Jania Wall, and Jose Lopez. I sincerely apologize if I've mispronounced your name. If I've called your name, please come forward.
I am Margaret Cargioli, Directing Attorney at Immigrant Defenders Law Center, and have worked on behalf of detained immigrants for several years. I have seen men and women cry in disbelief that after completing their criminal sentences, they found themselves imprisoned by Immigration and Customs Enforcement solely because they were born in another country. Their spouses, partners, children, and loved ones longed for their release, which oftentimes, due to severe immigration laws, can be years. These members of your community are our brothers, sisters, teachers, nurses, neighbors. They can be any of your loved ones who happened to one day in the past have made a mistake. How far must one pay for a past mistake? The true question here is, how far must one pay for a past mistake for which one has already paid the price under the criminal justice system? The answer is clear when humanity and justice are central to the equation.
Hi, my name is Celeste Caton. I'm an Immigration Program Manager at Jewish Family Service of San Diego. JFS is a core partner of the San Diego Rapid Response Network. The team I work alongside works daily to support any emergency calls coming through the SDRN network's emergency hotline. Through the years in my professional capacity, I have assisted with responding to countless calls coming through our emergency hotline, and I have personally witnessed the horrific results of DHS, ICE, and Border Patrol's long history of harassing and abusing our community members, deporting our neighbors, separating families, and creating a climate of fear in immigrant communities. For those 18 individuals and beyond, we at JFS, those a part of the network, and my colleagues here in the audience are the ones on the other side of the line when their families' panicked calls come in. We're the ones trying to help them make sense of the chaos that these practices instill in their lives and to work towards some version of repair, a future that quite honestly can never be truly safe as long as these practices exist. The San Diego Sheriff's Department's inappropriate information sharing with ICE prevents our whole of society from accessing protection and safety. Instead, what remains is immigrant communities living in constant states of fear, mistrust of local law enforcement, and long-term resulting trauma associated with related family separation stemming from the sheriff's information sharing with ICE. Today, I stand before you on behalf of JFS and the San Diego Rapid Response Network, demanding a full stop to the San Diego Sheriff's Department's entanglement with ICE. It's long past the time to do the right thing. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is AJ Hoven with the California Immigrant Policy Center, and I'm here to ask for an end to all ICE transfers and cooperation with ICE. As you've heard in the stories and testimony, this community is not made safer nor more whole with these current practices. I'm hoping that we can appeal to the American ideals of justice, compassion, and community, ideals that inspired my parents as they brought me and my siblings here from the Philippines, and I'm sure inspired you to the work that you currently do. But I have to recognize and name that we cannot lay claim to being a just community if we consign people to a shadow legal system predicated on the arbitrary circumstance of where you had the fortune of being born. We cannot claim to be a nation of second chances where none of us is forever judged by our worst moments if we deport people even after having paid their time to the community. We cannot be a nation made whole if we continue a practice that, at heart, separates parent from child, sibling from sibling. Please, not one more.
As the next speaker is coming forward, I'll invite the remaining speakers in person, Janine Arakat, Homaira Yusufi, and Christian Ramirez.
Hello, my name is Chad Adapon. I'm a member, part of Asian Solidarity Collective and Anak Bayan San Diego. Well, I guess I have to be here again. Last year, I saw the sheriff, and now I have to see the sheriff again look at me with a blank face after hearing so many families talk about their loved ones being lost, being ripped apart from the families. I'm not sure really what it is that goes through your guys' conscience. Some of you can't even look at me. Oh, here we go. But I feel like talking into this microphone is pretty much just a waste of time, so I'm just going to give a moment of silence to the victims and the families of the victims.
Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is Janine Arakat. I'm a resident of District 3 and a policy lead at the Partnership for Advancement of New Americans. My family came to the United States 33 years ago and found a home in San Diego like so many here. And I have questions that the public needs answers to. Recently, both City of San Diego and the City of Chula Vista adopted technology and privacy ordinances and policies to increase transparency, oversight, accountability, and to regulate the acquisition and use of surveillance technology, including data sharing. As the key law enforcement agency in the county, will you commit to take active steps to be more transparent and to protect privacy and civil rights and comply with the state laws like SB 34, which addresses automated license plate recognition, ALPR systems, and data? Will you provide an exhausted list of surveillance technologies and databases and all financial costs and sources of funding for Sheriff Department surveillance, including the acquisition of equipment, software, hardware, annual maintenance, training, data collection, data use, fusion, retention, and sharing information with federal law enforcement agencies or while in task forces with federal law enforcement? You've heard countless stories about the harm that transfers with ICE due to our community. So I'll reinstate our demands that the sheriff stop transferring individuals to ICE and notifying ICE when individuals are released from jail. Stop allowing DHS and ICE access to county property. Stop participating on joint task forces with DHS and ICE agencies, and stop sharing information, data, and resources with DHS and ICE. Like so many in the room have said tonight, not one more.
Good evening. My name is Hamaira Yusufi. I'm with the Partnership for the Advancement of New Americans. Our organization serves refugees and immigrants from refugee-producing countries. Our communities are here because the conditions in their countries made it impossible for them to stay, and they came to the U.S. to seek refuge and safety. As community advocates, we see the harm inflicted on our communities by the Sheriff's Department. We see the separated families. We see those seeking refuge in the U.S. living in constant fear of deportation. What we don't see is the invisible lines, the ways in which the Sheriff's Department is collaborating and sharing data with ICE and DHS and other federal agencies, sharing space and so on that put our communities at risk. Your participation in federal task forces gives your department full cover. There's no transparency as to what types of information you are sharing with ICE and other federal agencies, what types of third-party information sharing happens every day that puts our communities at risk of deportation. And I have so many questions for you all. For example, how can we be certain that the county data are secure and privacy protected when you are sharing this information with FBI, ERO, HSI, DHS, and so many other agencies? How many NDAs does the Sheriff's Department have with these federal law enforcement agencies? Does the Sheriff's Department use private data brokers like Thomson, Lexis, Clearview, and others for sources of information? If so, will you provide an exhaustive list? It is impossible for us to detangle local law enforcement from federal agencies until we understand these questions and better understand how this process works. And like so many others here, I'm here to ask for the stopping of the transfers with ICE and notifications.
Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Chair, members of the board, Sheriff-elect, members of the Sheriff's Department. My name is Cristian Ramirez. I am the Policy Director for the Service Employees International Union, and we represent 44,000 essential workers across the state of California, including the folks who clean your facilities in the county. And today I'm here because my members, many of whom are immigrants, people of color, have for far too long faced the ill effects of an unjust and inhumane deportation machine. The message is loud and clear tonight here, Supervisors and Sheriff-elect. Broad coalition from the borderlands of North County, across the whole spectrum, are demanding something that we have fought for so hard in this state, which is to treat every single person, regardless of where they were born, with the dignity and respect that they deserve. We fought for it in the state capitol. We won. We're fighting here again in our own county. The message is clear. The end of terrorizing immigrants has come to an end today, and it needs to come to an end with you by showing leadership. It pains me that after so many years of making sure that we treat immigrants and refugees with the respect that they deserve, we're still fighting here to do something so basic. Stop transferring our people, your people, the people we pray with, we work with, people we go to school with, our fellow San Diegans. Stop transferring them to ICE. And if we do that, we will make sure that this county lives up to its commitment. And we hope to continue to work with you to ensure that we finally put to an end this ill practice, inhumane practice of treating our people with justice and humanity. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to recall individuals that I previously called to speak. If I've called your name, please come forward. Donna Yercia Rodriguez, Benjamin Prado, Alexis Durbin, Tammy Carroll, Yolanda Meneses, Gabriel Guzman, Jose Lopez, Genia Wall, and Bedoiz of Villarreal. If I've called your name, please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Donna Urat Rodriguez. I'm a constituent of the District 3 and an immigrant rights leader.
I'm here to demand to put an end to the transfers of individuals to ICE and the corroboration of ICE and SDSD that notifies when someone has been released from jail. SDSD's collision with DHS and ICE has resulted in deportation and detention of 98 community members. These are families that you have broken up, that you have destroyed. 98 families. Children that you have impacted who are US citizens. You've impacted their mental health and their well-being. The San Diego Office of Sheriff's Department is the most deadliest threat to the lives of immigrants in San Diego. SDSD is participating in joint task forces, sharing information and utilizing county resources to facilitate transfers without transparency and accountability. This is unacceptable. This must end now if we want to ensure that all the families, immigrant families, stay united. The humane treatment of immigrants, we deserve to be treated humanely. This must end now. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the individuals that requested to speak by phone. Before we do that, I would like to note for the record that we received 15 individuals registered their support but did not wish to address the board. For the callers, when it is your turn to speak, you'll be unmuted and you will hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. I'd remind the callers that they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. We'll start with our first caller. The first caller is Consuelo. Your device might be muted.
Consuelo. To the people in the audience who are asking, the genuine people, not the paid shills who are there for the government, but the genuine people who are asking government for help. Have you learned anything from history? Brothers and sisters, are you truly not paying attention to what they're doing? Are you not seeing the entire picture? You must. It's time. Please understand what in fact they are doing. They could care less about you or your wants and needs. Everything is to fulfill an agenda. Please wake up to this agenda. You have to get it. It's not a conspiracy. It's been years in the making, years, a very long time. It's beyond the capacity of realization for many. Please remember, the same people you are asking help from are the same exact government that has done the worst, the most atrocious to minorities, to its own people. It's time to stop falling into the same trap. This government is not here to help you. This government only enables dependency. They want us to be dependent on them for everything. We need help. We need to help ourselves. We must do what we can for the human species. The government has never, will never, have never been of service to any of us. All they do is create more victims, more dependent slaves, more room for them to control us in everything we do. They are master manipulators. When will you all wake up? When will you realize that we have been programmed, we have been indoctrinated, we have been slaves to their laws, their pharmaceutical industry, their organizations that have only kept us all down? They remind you, you have even been hoodwinked and duped into believing that you are a minority. You are different. You are a different race. May I remind you, there is only one race. That is the human race. We have different colors. We have different cultures, but we are.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
Hi, Paul Henkin. This nation was founded by immigrants, and most of our fathers, our forefathers, were also immigrants. And this should be taken into account before reporting anyone. I think the sheriff's policy, which is compliance with SB 54, says it all. The sheriff will not transfer an individual to immigration authorities unless authorized by a judicial warrant or based upon a qualifying conviction as per state law. So I don't think there is a problem here as long as they follow the law. and supposedly the other police departments in this county are following this policy. If anyone in the sheriff's department or anywhere else is not complying with this law or policy, people need to be fired. Sounds to me like the ICE is bullying and kidnapping people. The sheriff's department needs to obey the law and the Constitution and just say no. Get a backbone. It is nice that the board, as the law suggests, holds a forum on this, but frankly, I wish it would be able to focus on areas where there is a real problem, like the homeless, opioids, or mental health. The law says, quote, a community forum is not limited to a regular meeting, unquote. You should request such a waiver from the state instead of sending letters out about other matters, controversial subjects like abortion or UN conventions. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
Hi there, my name's Max, and I'm from District 3. I'm speaking this evening to demand the end of the San Diego Sheriff's Department's collaboration with ICE in the forced deportation of my neighbors here in San Diego. The department engages in strikingly predatory behavior, including harvesting the data of undocumented residents and transferring it to deportation officials, even going as far as active collusion with border authorities on joint task forces with the intent to hunt, capture, and deport our fellow San Diegans. This board should know that we in District 3 are deeply aware of the department's activities and how it targets our friends, families, and our loved ones. It has become painfully clear that the Sheriff's Department does not act in our names and does not stand for the values of life, liberty, and tolerance that guide us. Their disregard for our communities, treating them not as people but as prey, must come to an end if we are ever to restore our trust in public officials, especially given that they take oaths to protect us, not to dismember our neighborhoods one family at a time. Thank you.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
This is Crystal Passman. I wanted to go over the numbers comparing us to LA County. LA County, which is the size of 9,800,000 people. We are 3,286,000 people. LA County put an indefinite ban on ICE transfers in April of 2020. We have approximately 169,000 undocumented immigrants. LA County has approximately 950,000 undocumented immigrants. LA County's budget for their sheriff's department is $3.61 billion. Our budget for this new sheriff-elect is approximately $950 million. The sheriff's department asked tonight for a new armored vehicle that is $400,000. I would like to understand why our sheriff's department feels the need to continue to use county resources to go after the approximately 169,000 undocumented immigrants when we have a very small population compared to LA County and a very small budget to work with when they want more money for armored vehicles for alleged rescue missions. Let's do the math. Let's look at this. You already have the qualifiable data from all of these people. Look at the quantifiable data. There is absolutely no budget to support this. There's absolutely no people to go and bother. Thank you.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Kevin Stevenson. So I am demanding that the sheriff stop transferring individuals to ICE and notifying ICE when individuals are released from jail. Stop allowing DHS and ICE access to county property, including parking lots. Stop participating joint task forces with DHS and ICE agencies, and stop sharing information, data, and resources with DHS and ICE. This is a real problem, and we really need to stop. We really need to hold our Sheriff's Department accountable. The San Diego Sheriff's Department has been actively colluding with DHS and ICE for a long time now. This entanglement includes notifying DHS and ICE when individuals are released from jail and are granting these agencies direct access to individuals while in custody. SDSD's entanglement with DHS and ICE has directly undermined its duty and lawful obligation to be accountable to the protection and safety of all people in San Diego County. Its collusion has resulted in the deportation and detention of 98 community members this year alone, and the separation of families in our region. The Sheriff's Department is participating in joint task force, sharing information, utilizing county resources to facilitate transfers without transparency and accountability. The community does not trust the Sheriff's Department, what they've been doing with DHS. We do not trust the status quo, and we're calling for change. So again, we want the sheriff, Kelly Martinez or Hemmerling, whoever the next sheriff will be, to stop transferring individuals to ICE and notifying them when individuals are released from jail. We want accountability, and we demand accountability now. Thank you.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Hello, my name is Sarah, and I live in District 3. I am a volunteer with the ACLU and currently a law student at California Western School of Law. Despite the passing of SB 54, the Sheriff's Department continues to entangle itself with DHS agencies. Finding loopholes around SB 54, like posting release dates of inmates publicly, is not only unconscionable, but also ironic that a law agency itself is attempting to find ways to avoid adhering to the law. I want you to imagine for a moment that your department was finding loopholes around a law that was impacting rich white families in La Jolla. I highly doubt your department would be so stubborn to comply with the law if that were the case. The reality is that community members are less likely to call our local police enforcement if they feel that they or a loved one might end up in ICE custody. If you're really trying to make our community safer, then what about spending resources instead on processing all the rape kits that are backlogged, or spending resources on avoiding future sexual harassment lawsuits in your department? Currently, 2 female detectives quit and are suing your department because of such severe sexual harassment at work. I'd much rather your time be spent on addressing the disgusting harassment your officers inflict on fellow colleagues, because their character with colleagues make me question their character around immigrants in our community. Seems to me your department struggles to follow the law in a variety of ways, and on behalf of District 3, I urge you to start complying now. Thank you.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Hi, my name is Gianna Giacalone, and I'm a member of District 4. I'm calling to ask the sheriff and county to stop using county resources that aid in the detention, deportation, and separation of families in our region. The San Diego Sheriff's Department is actively colluding with DHS and ICE. This directly undermines its duty and lawful obligation to be accountable to the protection and safety of all people in San Diego County. 98 community members have been deported and detained just this year as a result of the San Diego Sheriff's Department's collusion with DHS and ICE. When this collaboration happens, it further undermines trust and confidence in law enforcement. And we need every member of our community to truly feel safe and not fear the unnecessary tearing apart of their families. After hearing in great detail this evening just how much harm this does the community, I echo so many tonight in asking the following of the sheriff. Stop transferring individuals to ICE and notifying ICE when individuals are released from jail. Stop allowing DHS and ICE access to county property, including parking lots. Stop participating on joint task forces with DHS and ICE agencies. And stop sharing information, data, and resources with DHS and ICE. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I hear from the next caller.
Hi, my name is Michelle Solari, and I'm an immigration attorney and advocate for our communities. We come here year after year and share with you the harms that are caused by transfers and notifications to ICE. I ask that today is the last time we have to have a Truth Act forum, that the sheriff listens and decides to take action. The sheriff has a choice. The sheriff does not have to collude with ICE and have the effects that you're seeing here today. These effects are chilling and devastating for our communities. The blood, the trauma, and economic hardship caused by each of these transfers and notifications are on you. By continuing to provide ICE with notifications and transfers, you are choosing to harm our community and refuse to listen to the countless harms that were shared with you today. Look at the room around you. There are so many people here today that have shared countless harms with you. This is the 5th forum, and we continue to come, we continue to show up, because it is an outcry from our community. Not one more. Sheriff-elect Martinez, you have the opportunity to stop these harmful practices. Thank you.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Hello, my name is Salvador Sarmiento. I'm the policy director for an organization called the National Day Labor Organizing Network. We partner with the Employee Rights Center there in San Diego, and we're good friends as a consortium. Wish I could be there, but I came down with something, so I think everybody prefers me not being in the room. Just a quick point, we've long opposed nationally programs and transfers that conflate immigration with criminality, programs like Secure Communities, 287G, and like ICE transfers that sadly the San Diego County Sheriff continues to do, because these programs and practices inevitably are used to profile, target, punish day laborers, working people across our communities. These programs basically mean subjecting people to double punishment. And not coincidentally, these programs are being promoted by nefarious groups that I don't think anybody in the room should be associated with in San Diego. There's a reason why we litigated over and over with ICE and with the LA Sheriff around these types of ICE transfers, because these practices constantly violate people's constitutional rights. Yes, SB 54 established the floor, but progress on immigrant rights, on criminal justice reform, it didn't end in 2017. This is a forward-going movement, and sheriffs and our county supervisors need to be a part of this forward movement. Again, 54 was the floor, and we need to push forward for more rights that we know are still violated. So to the sheriff and supervisors, that's the kind of leadership we need in San Diego today, because, as many people as you think that spoke today, this is a very small number of the folks that, this is the consensus for these programs and ICE transfers to end is just growing. So it is time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Hello.
Yes, please go ahead.
Hi, my name is John Wee, and I'm a community organizer here in San Diego. I'm here to share their personal story. My younger brothers actually came to the United States when he was 18 months old. I did not reunite with my brother until we were in our teenage. He got in trouble at a very early age, and he got sent to prison at the age of 19 years old. Just think about that part, is that you actually send 19 years old to prison and locked up for life. So the hidden part about the story, that story is that we never share, is that being a Vietnamese immigrant, a lot of our Vietnamese people came to the United States after the war, Vietnam War ended. A lot of folks actually thought that they have the right to be here, and they do have the right to be here, and they're never thinking about applying for U.S. citizenship. My brother was one of them. He was found hung in the prison in 2018, and he passed away in prison. A life completely lost. So I ask you this, if he's still alive today and he finished his sentence and he's 40 years old, and ICE come and cuff him and send him back to a country he never knew, He was 18 months old when he left Vietnam. I don't want the same story to happen to another person. So I'm going to ask you to really hear the voices in the room today and also hear my family story, the tragedy that I still wake up every single day thinking that I have a brother somewhere, and I don't. And not have ICE transfer the people who already finished the sentencing or the people, we cannot continue to punish people over and over and over. So stop ICE transfer. Thank you.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Hi, my name is Ismahan Abdullahi, and I'm with Mass Pace, and also sit on the advisory board for the San Diego Immigrants' Rights Consortium. Our immigrant community deserves better. We heard the stories and the facts. We don't need lip service or unfulfilled promises of doing better. That is not enough. The poem written on the base of the Statue of Liberty says, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door." If only those who are meant to uphold the law can see the pain that they are causing to our immigrant communities when they voluntarily collude with ICE, and by doing so, co-sign this inhumane treatment of the very same people we are meant to protect. We are all here today to call upon the sheriff to stop deporting our neighbors and are separating our families. You heard the testimonies, you heard the stories, and we demand that the sheriff and the sheriff-elect stop transferring individuals to ICE, notifying ICE when individuals are released from jail, stop allowing DHS and ICE access to county property, stop participating on joint task forces with DHS and ICE agencies, stop sharing information, data, and resources with DHS and ICE, stop co-signing to this inhumane treatment. Trust is broken, hearts are grieved, yet the fight to make this county a safer place for all immigrants, regardless of their status, burns bright. The burden should not be on the backs of our immigrant and refugee community to make this county better, even though we do. It is the responsibility of the county and the sheriff to do the moral and right thing. History will remember, for never forget. It's documented. Not one more, not one more, not one more. Thank you.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
This is Truth. It's nice to finally be able to address a forum named after me. It's just too bad it's not a proper representation of the word. The full name of this act is the Transparent Review of Unjust Transfers and Holds Act. But once again, I saw an unjust transfer and hold happen to Audra tonight at this meeting. And this wasn't the first time Nathan released his goons on her. He's done it to her before for no legitimate reason. Transparent truth be told. So do the exemptions for transferring criminals over to ICE include sexual assault? Because that was never mentioned. And many of these speakers in favor have pointed out that ICE isn't the problem. It's people getting killed in Mexico, not America. So you're all addressing the wrong government by your own testimonies tonight. And so-called pastor, what if you're actually aiding criminals and not making a better community? You all need to stop pushing the criminal machine. Not one more criminal. This item sustainability statement says that materials interpretations will be available for translation. But how can that be confirmed if the county staff won't even translate my Espanol, Nihongo, or Francais at these meetings? But everybody knows what this item is really about, Nora, making sure nobody gets deported back to where they entered this country illegally from. Criminals that broke our law. And any supervisors or Sheriff Anthony that aid an unlawful, illegal act are guilty of aiding and abetting a criminal. Perhaps even treason could be argued, depending on the criminal activity of the individual who entered illegally. This item is probably the reason why so much nonsense was also illegally, unjustly, and unethically stuffed into the consent calendar today, because they wanted to be sure they had time for this junk item. No truth to be had from these supervisors or FBI-trained Anthony in this.
Thank you. And Chair Fletcher, that concludes public comment on this item.
Thank you for everyone who joined today to comment. Another feature of the Truth Act hearing is questions that were submitted by members of the public. The clerk will read the questions, and then the sheriff or sheriff's representatives or designee will have an opportunity to address those questions. So we'll turn it over to the clerk at this point to read questions that were previously submitted to the public, and these are also available publicly.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. There are 6 questions that I will read. As the chair mentioned, copies are available in the front of the chamber and posted online for the public to review. For the sheriff, I understand that you've had an opportunity to review these questions beforehand. You have a copy in front of you. I'll read each of the questions in its entirety and then give you an opportunity to respond, and then we'll move on to the next question. So the first question reads, public safety is dependent on community trust. The Sheriff's Department current entanglement with Department of Homeland Security or DHS agencies such as Immigration and Customs Enforcement or ICE transfers and notifications, participating in joint task forces with DHS agencies, allowing ICE access to county facilities and parking lots, and sharing and receiving resources from DHS erodes community trust and makes us all less safe. What would it take to end these practices immediately?
Thank you for the question. Before I answer that question, I'd just like to make a comment or a statement. I appreciate the time that people have brought in to come with tonight and share the stories. My heart breaks for the people who've lost loved ones, brothers, fathers, neighbors, family members that can't come back, people that lost years and decades of their life. That's just a horrible thing that happens. And you'll be in my prayers in that area. To answer this question, what would it take right now, exactly this moment? It would take a law change right now at this moment. As the sheriff, my job, I don't know, should I look at you or should I look at y'all? I'll look out here. I think the responsibility that I have as the sheriff is to try to have an agency that provides for the protection and the safety of the community, to build trust in the community. One of the issues that we're talking about tonight is the immigrant community, where many people are afraid to call 911 because they're afraid of deportation. We do not engage in deportation at all. We're trying to build that trust so that we can actually come and respond when people have an issue or immigrants have a problem, and we can save them from the folks. One of the issues, what I'm hearing tonight is stories about wonderful people that have been deported and are away from here. But when I look at these 18 people that we're talking about here, I hear the crimes, and I heard nothing of the victims. I mean, one of the people that we transferred to ICE was under 14 years old and the victim of child molestation. And that person will be a victim for the rest of their life. The person will be. There's no way around that. Now, one of these people that were transferred was the victim of a violent domestic abuse, and that person will be a victim for the rest of their life. I've been in law enforcement over 31 years. I know that there's a domestic violence cycle where it's very difficult to stop that, where people will abuse somebody, make up for somebody, apologize, they'll be good, and then there's abuse again. And I have to balance, I think what I'm hearing here is how do we decide who we're going to transfer? Because my experience is that when a community likes to be free of people that prey on them or cause problems in their issue. I've been involved for many years as a deputy, as a sergeant, lieutenant, all through the ranks, working with many communities in San Diego, different races, different populations, different demographic areas. And my experience is it doesn't matter who you are, a wealthy person, a poor person, immigrant, a citizen, whatever it may be. People just want to have a happy life, make a difference, work together, enjoy, be educated, have their children grow strong, and have a happy life. And it seems like the balance that we have to look for here is who should be given a second chance, who just made a mistake, or who is a predator. Now look at eight of the people that of these 18 that we transferred over were involved in possession for sales of narcotics. Possessions for sales of narcotics and transportation. Right now, the #1 killer of people in the United States, the #1 killer between the ages of 18 and 49 are people that have used illegal drugs, and they've died of an overdose. And fentanyl is rising fast right now. That outdistances everything that's out there. So you can say that a person maybe was a drug dealer and they've made their amends. But how many countless lives have they affected while they were selling narcotics to people? Who's died because of that? 7 of these 8 people that we transferred to ICE have done this over and over again. They're not just one-timers. They've proven by their behavior that they're going to continue to engage in that type of activity. So in terms of being safety, shall I transfer them to ICE so they can be removed from society and maybe create a safer area? Or do we say they get another chance? And how many other chances do these people get when they offend and offend and offend and offend and offend? we have to take into consideration the decision on what we're going to do with the victims also. Because there's the victims, the wife, the victim, the husband, the victim, the children of the people that have been transported out, the victims, as you said here, every story I've heard is compelling, every single story. And my heart breaks for everybody when I hear this right now. But there's also the people that have been victimized by the actions of these people. So I think the simplest way, if you would like to end this up and down the state where everybody can do that, work with, I think it's Assemblyman Carrillo, who is sponsoring Assembly Bill 930, I think it's 937. For the last 2 years, he's tried to create legislation in the state that would end all transfers completely. And it didn't pass in 2020, and it didn't pass in 2021. To continue to work with him and make this law change, that would be the fastest way to just totally say, this can never happen again. But until that happens, if we operate within the law, within the structure that's there, I have to balance the what's best, what I think for the community, what's best for the individual. Should somebody be reported and transferred, or should they not? I can tell you what we will do is we'll take a look as a sheriff's department. I'm not going to stop doing this right now tonight, but I'll take a look at all of the 31 charges and look and see, should it be 31 charges that we look at? If they just because they automatically qualify, should we send somebody? Or should we maybe take a look at the individual and say, was this a first timer? Was it a mistake? Was there a compelling reason that maybe we shouldn't transfer that? I can say that we'll look at that as a sheriff's department. But in terms of stopping this right now tonight, that will not happen right now.
Thank you, Sheriff. And just to clarify, the individuals turned over were the ones convicted of the crime, not the victim, correct?
That's correct. The ones
okay.
convicted.
Thank you. I just want to clarify. I thought that's what you meant.
I'm sorry about that.
No. Just want to make sure. Next question.
Thank you. Next question reads, how many non-disclosure agreements does the Sheriff Department have with federal law enforcement agencies? How many with FBI, Homeland Security investigations and enforcement and removal operations specifically?
0. We do not have non-disclosure agreements with the federal agencies.
Third question reads, ICE transfers and notifications punish people twice for the same crime and mean that immigrants are treated differently than U.S. citizens. This goes against the county's values of inclusion and equity. Will you, Interim Sheriff Ray and Undersheriff Sheriff-elect Martinez, commit to ending transfers and notifications? ICE and Customs and Border Protection, or CBP, are not considered peace officers under California state law, yet they are on joint task forces with the sheriff. Are CBP and ICE being cross-deputized as local officers on these task forces? Why? How can you guarantee that collateral immigration arrests will not occur when working on joint task forces with ICE and CBP?
Okay, there's several questions in there. One, we do not cross-swear in. We do not deputize federal agents. Federal agents are federal agents. The deputies are deputies. We do not swear them in to do our job in that area. In terms of how can we guarantee that collateral immigration arrests do not occur when working? Every task force that we're involved with knows that we, local law enforcement and the Sheriff's Department, adhere to SB 54, and we do not engage in immigration arrests or enforcement of any kind. We have memorandums of understanding with these task forces, and if they were to engage in that, then we would have to stop working with them. That's the agreement we have. So when we're actually engaged in a task force, whether it's dealing with illegal drugs that are coming across the border or trying to keep guns from coming across the border, whatever it may be, we do not engage in immigration at all. It's just, and the federal agents that work with us do not do that at the same time, or we cannot work together.
This next question is regarding the Sheriff's Department's Automated License Plate Reader, or ALPR program, and data sharing via Motorola/Vigilance Learn database, as well as through ARGIS. In 2020, San Diego Immigrant Rights Consortium's report on SB 45 compliance noted, quote, if the San Diego Sheriff's Department is only sharing their ALPR data with other local agencies, who are they already sharing that same data with on ARGIS? It would appear that there is no need to use the Learn database to share their data at all. SDIRC raised the question of the necessity of using two databases, and the Sheriff's Department committed to looking into that further, end quote. Has the Sheriff's Department investigated this question as promised, and what answers can be provided today?
I'm going to have to pass that question off to Commander Chuck Cinemo.
Good evening. So to start, the two systems are completely separated. So the Learn database is the Sheriff's repository for all of our collected database records for all license plate readers. That database allows us real-time access to that data. It also mixes it with other commercially available data that is one way from our provider to us that enables us to search a much larger database. The ARGIS database is a delayed database. We put our data into that and we share that with folks that we have memorandums of agreement with. Those agencies are local agencies, but they may not be Motorola customers, and that's why the ARGIS interface exists. There are other companies that do license plate reader data collection, and if they don't have access to Motorola's database, they wouldn't have access to that. That would mean that it would significantly hamper their ability to solve crimes, which is what we use license plate reader data for.
This next question has multiple questions in it, so bear with me as I read through them. Is the Sheriff Department still using the Vigilant Learn database? Which specific agencies have they shared ALPR data with during the past year? Which agency's ALPR data has been accessed by the San Diego Sheriff's Department during the past year? Has the Sheriff's Department purchased or made plans to acquire any additional ALPR equipment, software, training, or data from the Vigilant Motorola Solutions? Is the Sheriff's Department ALPR data accessible to ICE or any other federal agencies via Vigilant/Motorola, fusion centers, info sharing agreements, joint task forces, or other interagency collaborations? How can we be certain that our ALPR data are secure when the Sheriff's Department shares data with law enforcement agencies that work with DHS and other federal agencies? What are the criteria and protocols for authorizing sharing? Who reviews and considers each individual request for ALPR data? Are officers trained to refuse to share ALPR data unless authorized? What are the consequences for not following these criteria/protocols? What independent audits were performed this past year? How many data errors were discovered in ALPR information, and how were the errors corrected? Where is this information available to the general public?
Again, I'm going to ask Commander Chuck Cinemo to answer the question.
Please bear with me. It's a lot of questions all rolled in at once, so I'm going to try to tackle them one at a time. Yes, we are still using the Vigilant Learn database. That is our current contract provider. The specific agencies that have we've shared data with in the past year, San Diego PD, Carlsbad PD, Escondido PD, the District Attorney's Office, and then once again with ARGIS. In return, we've also used data from all of those agencies in our investigations. Have we made plans to purchase additional ALPR equipment and software and training? Yes, we have. Hardware is constantly breaking down. We do have to replace those things, and we do have software licenses to work with Motorola to have access to those databases. As far as info sharing goes, we do not share with any federal agencies directly. We do have some task force groups that work together, but typically there's a local person attached with them that is the source of that and ensures that we abide by SB 54. How can we be certain that ALPR data is secure when we share data with other law enforcement agencies? All we can do is rely upon the word of what is written in a memorandum of agreement. That is typically done between agency heads, so a chief of police and the sheriff, to be able to say, yes, we have rules that are set forth. They're pretty universal across the county. They're agreed to by the Chiefs and Sheriffs Association, so everybody pretty much abides by the same set of rules. And you know, the repercussions can vary. It can be from individual officer discipline to complete agencies being removed from the ability to search LPR databases. What are the criteria and protocols authorized for sharing? In that same thing, that MOA is an agreed upon document. The sheriff is the final reviewer and signer of that document for our agency. Are officers trained to refuse to share that data? Yes, they are. They're heavily trained in the rules of SB 54, as are our regional partners. And I know most folks in the audience may not believe this, but we actually have significant conversations with DHS and ICE in particular about what our limitations are so that they understand when they do make requests that we cannot comply with. They're rare, but they do happen, and they do understand our stance on that. We already discussed the consequences. And we've done independent audits. The Motorola Learn system has built-in audits inside of it. We also do annual reviews through our CLETS coordinator of our ALPR data. The question on errors, I'm not quite sure where that's going. Did we, as far as finding or discovering errors and were they corrected? So I'm gonna not answer that question, not knowing exactly what they're looking for. So I think that answers all the questions that were on there.
If I may, the question that we can't answer, we're certainly happy to follow up on that with whoever submitted that. If we can clarify that and we'll get an answer for them later.
Yeah, that'd be great, Sheriff, and we're happy to add anything to the record and post it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Last question is, what is the retention period for ALPR data? What is the rationale for that retention period? Are there any non-law enforcement groups that receive the ALPR data that the San Diego Sheriff collects? Why is data retained at all when it is unrelated to active criminal investigations? How many Sheriff's Department staff have access to ALPR data?
Commander Cinema, once again.
So the retention period for ALPR data is 1 year by our policy and 1 year by agreement with the chiefs and sheriffs. There's usually built-in, again, audits within a 6-month period to a year, depending on how those agreements are set up. Are there any non-law enforcement groups that receive our LPR data other than ARGIS? No. Why is data retained when it's unrelated to a criminal investigation? So a lot of times criminal investigations take time to develop or be reported. So if we immediately dispose of that data, it would do us no good. We do retain that data because there are times where we find out about crimes significantly after the fact, or we have to stitch series crimes together. So there can be significant delays in that. And lastly, how many staff have access? I don't have an exact number for you. We can get that. But essentially every deputy that's working in the field and detective and crime analyst would have access to that.
Thank you. That concludes the questions that were submitted by the public. Let me ask my colleagues if they have any comments that they would like to make. Supervisor Anderson?
Not at this time, thank you. No?
Supervisor Desmond?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you to our sheriff and everybody's presentations tonight and stories, and I do appreciate that. And it's it really kind of tears your heart apart when you hear about families being separated, but then also the sheriff, as he had stated. I think was the number correct? I guess there's only been 18 transfers in the last year, or what was that time period over? I guess I'll ask that as a question first. Was it 18 over the last year? I can't remember. It's been so long since the presentation.
These were 18 in 2021.
In 2021, okay.
We've heard the number 98 a few times. I'm not sure where that number comes from. We're going to have to find out, but it's 18 that we have transferred from the Sheriff's Department.
And well, thank you. Okay, and I get it. Nobody wants any more. I kept hearing. We heard the mantra. Not one more, not one more. And I can understand that, particularly when it affects your family. But I get, as the sheriff had said, there's, these are the worst of the worst that are getting deported. Particularly those with fentanyl, or those who've been, abusing people or trafficking people, or things like that, or having multiple convictions. So I don't think it's being done vindictively or just randomly, or however somebody feels about something. I feel that with only 18, you're pretty selective in the deportations, and it's an unfortunate circumstance. And I agree with Sheriff Ray that it's going to take a law change at the Sacramento level to affect this any sort of immediate action or go to zero or not one more. So I appreciate all the input tonight. I appreciate what all the sheriffs are doing as well, and I just want to say thanks for the effort and for everybody coming tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Desmond. I want to thank everyone who participated in the forum tonight. She said she didn't want to say anything. Thank you. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight, for coming out, being a part of this forum, sharing the stories, sharing puts a human face and a real face on the impacts in our community. I want to thank the Sheriff's Department for being here, for taking questions, for spending the time, and for the difficult job you have in working to keep our community safe. I fully, without reservation, support SB 54. The efforts to build trust between our community and between law enforcement actually keep us safer. It is well documented that communities that have sanctuary policies like this are statistically safer. There are lower levels of crime when there is more trust. When individuals are victims of crime, are willing to talk to law enforcement and work with law enforcement, that makes our entire community safer. My father-in-law immigrated to this country with nothing but hard work. And has worked hard his entire life to build a life that is here. The reality is we know that immigrants in this country commit crimes at a far lower level than those that were naturally born here. We know that they are less likely to draw on public assistance programs. And I believe without question that immigrants make our community stronger and make our state and our county much stronger. We also know that there's a lot of work to do to continue to build that trust and continue to build trust and confidence between our communities, everyone who lives in our communities, and our local law enforcement. And we look forward to continuing this work in the future. It's a vastly different situation than my first Truth Act forum in 2019. And I think while folks have additional desires for further we can go, I think we can recognize and appreciate where we've come and continue to pledge ourselves and commit ourselves to doing more to make sure that we build more trust, have better relationships, and do more to keep our communities safe. So thank you, everyone, for participating in tonight's forum. Appreciate, again, all the members of the public, the members of the Sheriff's Department that were here. And with that, we stand adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
The board will reconvene tomorrow, Wednesday, November 16th, 2022 at 9 a.m. for the planning and land use session of this meeting. Thank you.